You know, if you're a Brexiter, I think you should be rather devastated today. The government avoiding a major defeat on its Brexit bill by 324 votes to 298. After a late concession, ministers saw off a move to give MPs that decisive say on what happens over Brexit if they don't agree with the deal negotiated by the UK government. However, Dominic Grieve and others met with the PM earlier to get assurances, namely to give MPs a vote whether Britain should leave the EU without a deal. Are these MPs traitors or are they heroes? 0345 6060 973. A couple of them, Ken Clarke, Anna Soubry, voted against the government. Theresa May said and denied that she'd sold out to Brexiteers. 0345 6060 973. And we will, of course, speak to a leading Brexiteer on this programme later. Let's get a taster of what happened down there in Westminster today. Here's the ardent Remainer and Tory MP Anna Soubry.
I am getting a little tired of honourable members and right honourable members on the backbenches in government who come up to me and others in quiet and dark corridors. Everybody now has to stand up and be true to what they believe in.
And here's the Brexiteer and prominent Conservative backbencher Edward Lee.
This really is the ultimate wrecking amendment. And it's not wrecking of parliamentary sovereignty, it's wrecking of the will of the people. Democracy. Of democracy.
Yeah, a little hint from a colleague there. Democracy. The will of the people. 0345 6060 973. Surely this is the end of Brexit as we thought it was going to be. I mean, the huge winners here, surely right now, are Barnier and the head honchos at the EU. They must be rubbing their hands together. I mean, this is an absolute win for them. Let's speak with Tom Brake, Lib Dem spokesperson for exiting the EU. Tom Brake, good evening to you.
Good evening, Ian.
I mean, we know which way you would have clearly voted on this, but what are you making of what's happening to the government's position on this?
Well, I think there has been a last-minute concession, and watching it from the other side of the chamber, it was a bit of a farce, because what we had was the minister who was on his feet, almost, instructing one of his whips to go off and sort of walk up to the top of the chamber, the benches, and try and secure an agreement from Dominic Grieve. So this was happening sort of mid-debate, and I think the minister was on his feet no less than 4 times trying to clarify what it was that he was offering Dominic Grieve. It clearly did the job, because Dominic backed off pressing his amendment to a vote. However, what it does mean is that if the government don't come forward with a satisfactory amendment, I'm confident that Dominic Grieve will say it's not good enough, and we will get to vote on it when it comes back to the Commons.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that seems to be the flavour of what is happening there at the moment. Of course, I mentioned this at the beginning, Tom, that if this transpires that there's no deal, and this gives the EU negotiating team every incentive for there to be no deal, then this goes to a direct vote.
Well, I don't know why you think that it gives the EU an incentive to give us no deal. I mean, both parties are going to lose very substantially in a no-deal scenario, the UK and the EU, because what that would mean in practice is that Dover, as a port, would stop to operate, but equally so would Calais. So I don't think that's in either party's interest.
But a no deal, of course, would then put it back to you guys on the green benches to vote one way or the other on a no deal. And, of course, we know which way that would go, given the slim majority of the Conservative Party.
Well, what we hope will be the outcome of the negotiation that Dominic Grieve and the government are now about to conduct is that we will have a meaningful vote, which actually gives us an opportunity to reject no deal and say to the government that they have to go back and negotiate some more, because to have a meaningful vote, members of Parliament have got to have more than an option which is, here is the really bad deal that we've managed to secure, and here is an even worse no-deal scenario. That, to me, doesn't represent a meaningful vote.
How do you feel in terms of the comments of people like Edward Lee, the will of the people, going against the 52%?
Well, I'm disappointed that the government didn't allow a vote on an amendment that we had put forward, which would have given the people a final say on the deal, and then we would have been testing the will of the people.
Well, they've had a say, of course. We had the referendum.
Yes, indeed. They had a referendum.
How many says do you want?
2 years ago. But is anyone really saying that, if, for instance, the UK economy were to suddenly nosedive, if, for instance, we were suddenly to find that many sectors of the UK economy didn't have enough people to work in them, whether it was the NHS or the agricultural sector, would everyone still be clamouring to pursue the will of the people and continue with the disaster? I mean, surely, if there are circumstances that emerge, and we've started to see that in terms of the OECD has now confirmed that the UK has gone from being the fastest growing economy out of the UK, the US and the EU to the slowest growing. The Bank of England saying that each household is £900 down on where they thought we would be now in relation to the to prior to the e-referendum vote. These things are happening. Are we going to continue to pursue this agenda if, as all the government's own analysis confirms, it's going to cause us huge damage economically? To me, I think members of Parliament have got to look at the facts, and if the facts are going to damage the livelihoods of their constituents, then I think it's perfectly legitimate to try and secure a final say on the deal so that people can all have a say on whether they think they still want to proceed with this project.
But of course, later when we speak to a prominent Brexiteer on this, he will also have a big old list of things that have improved and are looking pretty tickety-boo since that referendum.
Rather short, that list.
Well, I'm sure he will produce, in his own words, evidence to the contrary. However, Tom Brake, is there a part of you that feels, bearing in mind that there is the will of the people issue that Edward Lee and others quite rightly put forward, is there a bit of you that feels you're letting down democracy? You're going against what people voted for, which was to leave the EU and all that goes with it?
I can't see how trying to secure a vote for everyone in the country is letting democracy down. On the contrary, I think it was David Davis who said that we're not a democracy. Well, we don't live in a democracy if we can't change our minds. Well, I agree with him, and the way of testing that would be through a final say on the deal. And if people vote in that in that vote to in that referendum to continue with what the government have embarked on in terms of a deal, then that's what they voted for, and I accept the outcome. But people may think that what they were sold 2 years ago in terms of the bonanza of benefits, so better trade, savings coming from us leaving the EU, greater presence in the world, given that none of these things have transpired, I do think whether perhaps it's not a time, or there won't be a time soon, where people are entitled to say, well, I do want to have another chance to cast my vote or my views on this critical subject.
Tom Brake, thank you, sir. Lib Dem spokesperson for exiting the EU. Let's speak with Tom McTague, Chief UK Correspondent for Politico. Evening to you, Tom.
Hi there.
I put the point there to Tom Brake that this this is a huge victory for the negotiators in the EU. He seemed to resist that analysis, but it does seem to me this sort of hands quite a lot to Barnier and co on a plate.
I think there's a lot in what you're saying. The big thing that the EU now has is that they know that the government has to go back to MPs who Brussels is well aware are overwhelming, or not overwhelmingly, but a majority are in favour of a soft Brexit, and also there now looks to be a date inserted into the EU withdrawal bill, which is at the moment, Dominic Grieve had it down as the 30th of November, after which the government had to come back to the House of Commons. So, one senior government official said to me, well, what incentive is there for Michel Barnier to do a deal before the 30th of November?
You described this as seismic today. What is your definition for that, Tom? How do you corroborate that point? Was it seismic because of what you've just said, or was it seismic because of the alleged bloody nose it's given the Prime Minister?
Both. I mean, it's a remarkable moment, actually, and I think you can sometimes overlook it, but there was a point about 5 minutes before this vote was going to be called, when a whole load of anti-Brexit Conservative MPs trooped back into the House of Commons chamber, having been taken out by the Chief Whip and shown to the Prime Minister's office, where she had to back down and make a concession to them, otherwise she was going to lose the vote. So what does that show us? It shows us very clearly that those MPs hold the balance of power, and she had to give in to them. Now, where does that take you in the long run? Where does the logic take you in that? It takes you to a place where they have the power over her. They're in pure numbers to control parts of this process.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at the maths, you're right, and surely these Conservative Remainers will do this again, won't they? Any time they fancy scuppering something they sense is taking us towards a hard Brexit, they will play this same card.
Very much. Most of those anti-Brexit Conservative MPs are in favour of what is known as the sort of Norway model, or even the Norway Plus model, which is inside the single market and inside the customs union. And that is also something that Michel Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator, something that he favours. So you can see where a pressure point is building up here, a sort of pincer movement on the Prime Minister to offer something similar to that. Now, she doesn't have to, and what the Department for Exit in the European Union will say is, David Davis's department, they will say, we will get such a good deal that we will be able to win over a number of those anti-Brexit MPs, but we'll wait. We'll have to wait and see on that one.
Is there anyone on this planet that thinks that's going to happen?
I struggle to find some of them when I speak to negotiators on both sides, on the UK and EU side. There are people who are really sincerely involved in an effort to get a good deal here, who are quite down at the moment about the UK's prospects, and that is quite sobering as a reporter when you speak to these people who are scratching their heads to find a way through here.
I put the question at the beginning of this, Tom. Is this the end of Brexit as we thought it was going to be? What do you feel about that?
I've just written a piece that will go up tomorrow morning, in which I think the intro is something along the lines of a soft Brexit or no Brexit at all has just got more likely. Yeah. So I think there's a lot in what you're saying. I mean, one of the questions is whether there is any form of Brexit which carries a House of Commons majority, and what we're really heading for is a crisis in the autumn or winter, in which this comes to a head, and the only way out is an election.
And this doesn't end here, of course. I mean, there's all sorts of... It's chaos out there, isn't it? I mean, which makes it all rather interesting from our point of view, that this is all going on. Arguments at Anna Soubry and Bernard Jenkin, the Brexiteer, I notice on Twitter, getting into a bit of a spat this evening. This ain't over.
Oh, this isn't over by a long shot, but I mean, I think what your listeners should also understand is that this is not going to be over on Brexit Day, March 29th next year. It's not going to be over when we leave the transition period at the end of 2020. This is, somebody said this to me, this is like a 10-year process. Or even if you look at what the Swiss are going through at the moment, it's a never-ending process. Yep. This negotiation, I mean, they are currently negotiating with the EU over their latest deal, and they voted against joining the single market in 1991, I think it was. So, that is our future.
Yeah, and we can almost imagine this conversation in another 10 years as well. Tom, thanks for your time, sir. Tom McTague, Chief UK Correspondent for Politico. Check out Politico for the article he was alluding to there. 0345 6060 973. I'm going to lay this one on the line. I think that's it. I think that's done. But Brexit as we know it what we're going to be looking at here will be a Norway option. Clearly, it'll be elongated over many years. By the time we get into the next decade, as it were, people would have either died off, forgotten, or given up hope of the Brexit they once dreamt of. That's all gone. Freedom of movement will be part of that Norway deal as well, and that's probably where we're going to end up, as Tom just said there. It'll be a soft Brexit or none at all. 0345 6060973. If you voted to leave the EU, you must be feeling pretty devastated tonight. I think that's it. Game up in incredible comment on this. Faisal Islam, I noticed, tweeting, one rebel just told me, he says, that if the government reneges on the PM's personal assurances made this afternoon on a meaningful vote, they will vote it down next week. Interesting one. I'll have to bleep myself here. Laura Koonsberg tweeting, one Tory rebel told me earlier, reference Theresa May, if she F's us, she is F'd herself. Yeah. Pulling no punches. I mean, these guys mean business. They have essentially dismantled Brexit as you thought it was going to happen. No other way to say this. Lynn says, who needs enemies when we have Remainers? OK, don't ever ask me again to believe in democracy or that our parliamentarians care a jot about anything other than themselves. Civil war is all these modern aristocrats would understand. Steve's in Marlborough. What are your thoughts, Steve? Good evening.
Good evening, Ian.
Hi.
Completely and utterly furious. I voted for Brexit. I wanted Brexit, although in my heart of hearts, I remember talking to Clive Ball 2 weeks after the vote and said it'll never go through. We've got a government that hasn't got any appetite for it. We've had scaremongering upon scaremongering upon scaremongering, and we were actually told just before, as you remember, Ian, by the then Prime Minister and the Chancellor and the Bank of England, Mark Carney, all told us the economy will collapse within a week.
Emergency budget.
It is infuriating. I shall never, ever vote for anything ever again.
And do you sense, Steve, that what happened today, I mean, I put it in these terms at the beginning, is this the beginning of the end of Britain's journey out of the EU?
I think the beginning of the end was about a month after we voted to leave. It's been a constant campaign of Remain and a constant campaign. Not forgetting that most of the major players in the cabinet were Remainers anyway, and it's an abject failure in carrying out the wishes of the majority of the public, regardless of what you wanted. We voted for one thing and we got another, and also it's an abject example of how not to negotiate. This has been pitiful. I negotiate every day in my business, Ian, with customers and suppliers. If I carried on as the team that have represented us have done in the negotiations, my business would be shut in a week.
Let me bring in Jason here. Stay there, Steve. Jason in Sutton. What are you making of this, Jason? What are you making of Steve's comments?
Do you know, I feel so sorry for Steve. To use the words of Aaron Banks today in the Select Committee, he's been led up the garden path. We know for a fact that the Brexit campaign, the Leave EU campaign, was based on a complete pack of lies. He's angry. I understand that completely. He's angry with the wrong people, not the Remain people. The question you asked, Ian, was, is this the end of Brexit as we know it? The Brexit, as the Brexiteers know it, never existed. It was a pack of lies and a complete fantasy. You even had Nigel Farage last night on LBC saying that he's categorically never met the Russian ambassador, never been to the Russian embassy. This morning, all over social media, is a link to the Russian embassy with a photograph of Nigel Farage meeting the Russian ambassador at the Russian embassy.
Was it, just a point on that, was it the current ambassador? That was my question when I saw that picture.
Yes, it is. He's been there since 2011, and the question that was asked is, what about UKIP meeting with the Russians since 2012? And that picture was taken in 2013. But that's by the by. Today, you had Aaron Banks and some diplomat from Belize who ran the communications campaign for Leave EU, saying specifically that the facts were winning the referendum, so they had to use alternative methods, and they didn't mind at all leading people up the garden path. I get what Steve's saying. He's in a bit of trouble.
Go on, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, No, I don't think I was led up the garden path. I didn't believe we'd save 350 million. I'm not naive. I saw it as I'm an intelligent man that studied. I've got a business. I've been in business all my life. I studied the fiscal policy of Europe and the UK. So, don't condescend me in saying I didn't know what I was voting for. I didn't know. Neither did you as a Remainer. Neither does anyone. Nobody that have been the second or third largest contributor to Europe net, which we are.
No, hang on, Steve. Hold on. No, you're wrong.
No.
Okay, go on. Let Steve finish his point, Jason. I'll come straight back to you.
Okay. Let's take that out of the argument. Nobody of our size is left. And certainly not of our type of economy. You don't know, neither does anyone else, what would have happened to our economy. Neither do you know the outcome of it, because it's never been done before. It was all speculation on both sides.
Okay, let me put that back to you, Jason.
Firstly, it's crazy. I mean, these poor people have been lied to for so long. It's embedded. It really, really is. I mean, we talk about things like scaremongering. Steve mentioned it a minute ago. Scaremongering. 76 million people live in Turkey, and they're joining the European Union. 29 million Romanians are going to come.
But not everybody, Jason. Not everybody bought into those sort of the extremities of potential outcomes. But many people, like Steve, just saw other reasons why they felt more comfortable exiting the EU.
Like, for example, there is not one single benefit that has ever been presented to the United Kingdom, or the people of the United Kingdom, more importantly, that Brexit is going to bring. Not a single one.
Okay, Steve, what was the benefit that you thought it was going to bring?
Well, the benefit for me, there are several issues. The first one is that we have got, both outside the EU and inside the EU, uncontrolled immigration. And we've never had in the last 30 or 40 years a way of controlling that. I do agree that there was
not true again. Not true again. I don't know if you've ever, Steve. Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't know if you've ever tried to get into the UK without a passport. It's really, really hard because we've got things called border control.
Well, there is. Jason, there is freedom of movement within the EU, of course. I mean, you're not disputing
Jason,
that.
What would you put down? What would you put the current depression? I employ a lot of people, and I'm very aware of the current employment situation. I'm very aware of the crush on the lowly paid. I do okay. I look after my lowest paid workers very, very well. I'm an exception to the rule.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, thanks. What we also know is that low-cost labour in this country has driven the lowest paid onto lower wages. And there is no disputing that. There is a low cost.
Therein lays the rub. Therein lays the rub. You see, we have what's called a minimum wage law in the UK. The employers that were employing people from all over the world, not just the European Union, all over the world, it's the employers that were breaking the law, not the people that were working.
Some people see a minimum wage fast became a maximum wage, and that was one of the issues around that. There's just a final point, Jason. Firstly, what is your reaction to that statement that this is the beginning of the end of the journey out of the EU?
Sure. The sooner we stop this ridiculousness, the better. In the energy sector in the UK, and we've been looking for primary legislation simply to define the legal definition of energy storage in the UK. 18 months that's been put back because Parliament's too busy to make primary legislation for this energy storage sector. And that's a massive growing sector in the United Kingdom. It's ridiculous that the country is almost ground to a halt. Tens upon tens of thousands of jobs have been lost in the UK since the referendum. The Bank of England have issued hundreds of billions of pounds in order to stop that devastating crash.
Okay. Now I hear how you're defining it, Jason. I know that, as I put to Tom Brake, others would put a whole different gloss on this. Let me put the same point to Steve. You're furious today, Steve. Are you now conceding that's the end of it, and we will, in one shape or form, not be will be remaining, or if we are leaving, it won't be in the form you perhaps first thought?
To reiterate what I said at the beginning, Ian, I never believed we would leave. I didn't think we had the stomach for it. I think there will be no leave per se. If we do, if we do come up with a deal, it will be so watered down it won't be worth having.
All right, on that point, Steve, great call. Jason, thank you too, sir. That kind of gives you a flavour of, that was a very polite, considering, all things considered, dispute between a Remainer and a Brexiteer. 0345 6060973. Was it a smack in the chops, do you think, for Brexiteers? I think it was. I don't think enough is being made, frankly, about where this is likely to take us. Tom McTague made that comment earlier. One senior official, not a Brexiteer, said we've now removed every incentive from the EU for doing a deal by the end of November. I think it's right. I think that's right. This hands all the power surely back to the EU, and the dozen or so MPs that went to see Theresa May, note David Davis absent from any of those negotiations or conflabs or whatever it was that they had in those back rooms at Westminster. And those guys are just going to keep coming back for more. They now smell blood. 0345 6060973. We're going to chat to Gina Miller as well in this section, of course. And Gina Miller famously advanced the process to sort of where it is today through a court order. We'll get more on that and her reaction in a few moments. More from you. Lines are open. It's 10:30. And the head trying to sort of chunk down, if you like, the events of Westminster today. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news if you voted to leave the EU. That shouldn't really be my job. But whatever way I slice this, I keep coming back to the same point that we are now witnessing the end or the beginning of the end of our journey out of the EU. If you like, the Brexit that some thought they were going to get, they're not going to get. 0345 6060973. Let's meet with Gina Miller, businesswoman, transparency campaigner, who led, of course, famously, that successful legal challenge against the system of Brexit. Gina Miller, good evening to you.
Good evening, Ian.
What are you making of what happened today? This sort of seems to hint towards what you'd campaigned for.
Well, this debate and the whole of today wouldn't actually be happening unless I'd won the case. But if you go to the actions of today, I think you have to look at it glass half full or glass half empty. And if you're a half full person, you'd say, well, the MPs debated, held the government to account to a degree. But if you're a glass half empty, you'd say, well, do we really know what happened today? There were words like potential further consultation. What I find so frustrating is that the MPs have just kicked the can down the road. They're storing up problems for tomorrow. I mean, I just think they're being paid by our money, our taxes. They should get on and make more decisions than they're making. This whole process, irrespective of how you voted, is just taking too long, and we are not getting any decisions. Because actually, tomorrow...
Well, I think we just lost your line, Gina. Are you still there?
No, I'm still here. I'm just saying, but today was about safety nets.
Yeah.
It was about ensuring, because there were three really important amendments today. One was obviously the meaningful vote, but another was, which is sort of slightly being ignored, which was the amendment around the Henry VIII powers. These are these powers that would ensure that the government can just do as they will once the laws come back after we leave. And, you know, they should be a safety net to say that they can't just bypass Parliament. And I actually am very frustrated by today, because I don't think we really know where we are.
Do you think, I mean, my reading of this is that Dominic Grieve and co have sort of, from a Remain perspective, played a blinder here, really, because they've handed a pretty substantial wedge of negotiating power to the EU, which means that the EU will then have the option, and are likely to take that option, of coming back with a rotten deal that the UK can't take. It then goes back to Parliament, which, if you do the maths in terms of sheer numbers, a crucial vote on something like the no deal would be MPs voting against that. Is that too simplistic?
It is too simplistic for two reasons. One is, this has nothing to do with Remain or Leave. This is about the fact that we're going through a process that needs to be scrutinised, and that's what Parliament does. That's what we've fought about. Everybody believes in parliamentary sovereignty. They're there to make sure that the process happens properly. And the second reason it's wrong is because this is not about the EU. This is actually about us, our constitution, and the way Parliament works. The EU is not going to turn around and say, oh, because you had a vote in Parliament, they're going to punish you, because actually they lose as well if they punish us. This whole idea, this whole argument, and the way it's progressing about if we have a debate in the UK, the EU is sitting there glued to every word we say, and they're going to say, oh, well, we can now punish the UK, or we've seen their hand. It's just not the way negotiations work. This is not how.
Is it really not how it works? Is it? You're saying it's not that simple?
It is
Are you giving them too much credit here, Gina Miller, in saying this? Do you think Barnier wasn't glued to 24-hour news watching?
I'm not interested in the EU. I'm interested in our parliamentary process.
But you said that this isn't about Remain or Leave, but the chaos. But come on, that's exactly what it's about, isn't it? There were death threats, resignations, rows continuing this evening on Twitter. It's divided between those who want to stay and those who want to go.
Well, I have to say that's really disgraceful, and I am very concerned about it. And the arguments on Twitter are not helpful.
True.
And let's be sensible about this whole process. It's actually about ordinary people's lives. There's a human side to Brexit. And all of this game playing and ping pong and Remain, Leave, and these are vacuous terms that is not helping anyone in this country. We have to get serious about this. That's what this process is about.
OK, Gina, let me just play you Anna Soubry speaking earlier in the Commons. In fact, we can't hear that audio, but this essentially was her talking about death threats and what has been happening in that realm. And that's because people feel divided, but there's a polarity, isn't there, between the Remain and the Leave, not about the mechanics of Parliament.
I agree. I understand that. And believe me, I understand about the death threats and everything else that goes on. But we need to move on. For everybody's sake, we need to move on. We have to understand, and reporters, medias, the MPs, everybody has to take this to a different level. There is a human cost to Brexit. We need MPs to stand up to say, we are voting like this. I mean, I thought Philip Lee's resignation letter this morning was absolutely on the nail. This is about making sure that it's the best for the country. Can we please get back to doing what's best for the country, which is having a parliament that scrutinises everything that's happening and actually votes at the end of it with a free vote, and then we move on. Whatever that vote is.
And I can now play you that audio, Gina. You're aware of more or less the contents, but this is what Anna Soubry said in Parliament today.
To the commentators who say to me, you're doing a great job, keep on going, in the face of death threats, which mean that one of our number had to attend a public engagement with 6 armed undercover police officers. That is the country we have created, and it's got to stop. To the journalists who fight nobly for every cause, but on this most important of issue, are mute. It's got to stop. Everybody now has to stand up and be true to what they believe in.
I'm sure, Gina, you would probably echo most of that, and you've also been on the receiving end. You know what it's like to get threats and unpleasant things said about you. I mean, this is grubby stuff, isn't it?
No, but this is my point. I live with this every single day. Why should I have to? And that's why I'm saying, from a point of experience and knowledge, that we need to move on. We cannot keep revisiting these old arguments. We need the Prime Minister to go away, get the best deal she can get, come back, put it to Parliament. They can debate it properly. I believe they need to be voting on it with a free vote. And if they feel that they can't make that decision, I have now reluctantly come round to the view that I don't think they're a bit like the sort of lions from The Wizard of Oz, some of them, not all of them, looking for their courage. And if they can't quite find it, perhaps they give it back to us. Because, at one point, the politicians decided to hand over to the people of this country the decision of travel when it came to that referendum. Why not give it back to the people of Britain to decide where it ends? Because I'm not sure that they're capable of coming to an end.
Was that ultimately your goal? Another referendum?
It's not another referendum.
But be honest, Gina. Ultimately, you're a Remainer. Is that what you really want?
No, excuse me. No. I was never a passionate Remainer. I weighed up the pros and cons.
Sure.
I'm actually a businesswoman, and that's what I do. Most people would do. Most people weighed up the pros and cons and voted in the way they thought was best for their families and themselves. Nobody voted to hurt themselves or their families. So you voted with your conscience, you decided you would vote. But the problem is that Parliament should be at the centre of this, and they're not behaving with true integrity and honesty. There are lies being told, there are things that are being hidden from the public. And because of that, I have changed my mind about the fact that it shouldn't be up to Parliament, it should actually come back to the people. And I don't believe in referenda, so I'm saying this with really reluctantly, because I don't believe in referenda.
Gina Miller, powerful stuff to finish on. Great to talk. Thank you. Businesswoman, transparency campaigner. Of course, it was Gina Miller who successfully led that challenge to where we are today, that we do have this parliamentary debate about this. Some might say it's all down to Gina Miller, but she was proven right on a point of law that parliamentary democracy must not necessarily usurp, but run in tandem with the synergy, if you like, in layman's terms, of there's a referendum, and what runs concurrently with a referendum is a parliamentary debate that follows, etc. She would happily see that go back to the people, because she's now disappointed in the quality of that parliamentary debate. Well, she's absolutely bang on about that point. I mean, it's all pretty miserable stuff. Here's another decision that wasn't fully made today. We're all awaiting big votes, and suddenly, oh look, where's that long grass? It's just over there. Go, and we kick yet another piece of EU debate into that particular territory. And that appears to be the game we're playing. We're going to talk about that in 6 months, and that'll come in 9 months, a year, 2021, 2022, something happening in March 2019. Oh yes, we're leaving. Are we? Well, sort of. I'll stand by what I said at the beginning. This is the beginning of the end of Britain's journey out of the EU. I cannot slice this any other way, no matter how hard I try, that Dominic Grieve and co have done their best on this one, and from a Remainers perspective, this is cracking work, clearly. And the concessions they've got from the Prime Minister, as far as I can read this, mean, despite what Gina Miller says, Barnier and co will be looking at this, rubbing their hands with glee, thinking all we have to do here is just throw the most impossible demands back to David Davis and co. That could never be accepted, therefore it goes back to Parliament, do the numbers, they all say, no, we're not going to go with this, and the whole thing either starts again, or we, guess what, here it comes again, kick it into the longer grass again. Tony says, I propose that all Leavers and Remainers meet in Hyde Park and just have a fight. Let's see who wins. Much cheaper than another referendum. Yeah, I kind of totally see where he's coming from as well. Ethaniel says, bang on here. The EU now has no reason to offer us a good deal at all. Barnier has run rings around the UK, either due to Number 10's incompetence or design. And I agree, we are heading towards a EU vassal state status. All the EU shackles, but now with no phone line to the jailers. Anguiliano says, Britain is in such a horrible mess. I predict civil unrest is not far away. Brexit is the most stupid decision, and I never thought I would see something like this in my lifetime. I'm 49 years of age. It's madness, and it needs to stop. Well, it's absolute chaos. There's no way around this. I think that if you speak to the average person on the street and say, what did you make of what happened in Westminster today? I mean, this is just crucial stuff. I mean, we should all be on the edge of our seat waiting to see where this is going to take us. And we sort of tend to glaze over a bit, and then we realise the usual suspects are repeating the same tired mantras on either side, and yet again, we get that sense that we are not moving anywhere close to anything conclusive on this. But to analyse this, I would suggest this is we've handed an open goal to the EU. 0345 6060 973. Don't go away, G. I'm with you in just a second. I just want to play you a clip of Dominic Grieve. Of course, he's the Tory MP, absolute passionate Remainer. This man is I'm surprised he's not permanently in Brussels. He's that much of a Remainer. He was at the heart of this amendment today, meeting with others, Theresa May, the Prime Minister. This was him speaking to Ian Dale a little earlier, explaining his view.
The government agreed that the amendment raised an important issue. The matter about the ability of Parliament to have a meaningful vote, not just on the final deal, but no deal, had to be allowed, and they're going to work with us to put together an amendment package when the bill goes to the Lords.
Am I missing something here? So if they vote on no deal, they will clearly say we are not going to endorse the no deal. The numbers game tells us that. The government fall. There's another referendum. So if Labour come, can you imagine? I mean, if you thought the chaos of what is happening with our government's team at the moment couldn't be matched, have you seen what people like Rebecca Long-Bailey and the kind of guff that's coming out of those benches at the moment? I mean, that is equally off the scale. Jivan in Ilford, what's happening? Good evening.
Good evening, Ian. Good evening. Frustration, we put up our flag of surrender.
You think that's it?
It's it, because the bottom line is still the same. The bottom line is we will be contributing to EU. We will continue to listen to them. We will do as they say. Yeah. A simple example of that is, if I may, that ship that was off the coast of Italy, they refused to take the refugees. Guess what happened? Spain was pressurized.
Yep.
Take them. They're now in Valencia. It's an example of how EU works. It is not based on what people want. What we should have done.
So the collectivism of the EU is what you're...
Indeed. And
which is what you voted to get out of.
We wanted to get out of this because, as I said before, and I've said it again, we wanted three things. British Parliament passing British laws, Britain having the control of its money, okay, and Britain having control of its borders. These three were the basic ingredients of Brexit. The problem here is very simple. Theresa May created a mess, basically, by not immediately saying to Brussels, we're out, we're passing a law which says British Parliament is supreme. Thereafter, we will negotiate with whatever you say to us, we will consider in Parliament, and we'll come back to you.
And Sean, perhaps, from if you're speaking from a Brexiteer's point of view, should have said, what are you offering us? Not waiting for Merkel and co. to say, what are you going to give to the EU?
No, we didn't want that, because the bottom line is simple. First of all, our Parliament is supreme. That's the bottom line. Then, whatever Brussels, Merkel, whoever says, okay, because David Cameron tried to get something done before the referendum, and he didn't get anywhere. The result of that was that we were in a position where people were very upset.
He came back with nothing.
Exactly. So, in other words, once the referendum took place, we should have shut the borders. We should have said,
all right. I mean, that was then. Let's look at now. Ian Martin, the journalist, said, I can see that moment in December when Parliament takes over talks and the Commission, the EU Commission, says that'll be £40 billion, please, plus £6 billion a year and free movement of people.
Indeed. And we will be stuck in the long graph that you suggested will continue and continue and continue until somebody at a future date says, Britain has looked at everything, they're in such a mess, they want to come back, and we will give them a chance.
Jivan, strong stuff. Thank you for that. 0345 6060 I'm bound to also throw into the mix here. Is there anything wrong with the EEA plus option, as some are calling it, a sort of Norway model? I mean, is that so offensive? Is that really that bad? We had a sort of Norwegian model where a bit in... freedom of movement, of course, would go with that if that's the big issue. Is that any longer an issue? Now you've had a couple of years to digest what's happened. You've realised that EU immigrants have not kidnapped your family or culled your dog and everything's sort of tickety-boo. Does any of that matter? Chris in Richmond, hello.
Good evening, Ian.
Good evening.
The last call, I don't know where to start really, Spencer. When it comes to immigration, closing the borders, great. Well, I live near Kingston Hospital, where over 10% of the workforce on the clinical staff are EU nationals, so doctors and nurses. As for the comments about the British Remainers, MPs like Soubry and Grieve undermining Parliament, well, frankly, Boris Johnson has done a damn sight better job than any possible vote or statement from people like Anna Soubry.
How?
And the final... Well, because of his, frankly... continued attempts to go off message and undermine the Prime Minister. A few months ago on Question Time, you had Suella Fernandez, a member of the ERG, saying that it was Project Fear that we would have to pay a Brexit bill. What a pack of lies from a government minister. But the thing that really irks me about the most is the fact that Anna Soubry had to stand up and make the comment she made today. I'm not a Tory, but I wrote a piece for Ian Dunt's website a few months ago. I am absolutely disgusted that members of Parliament in my country and our country are now receiving death threats from the idiots from the Daily Mail and the Daily Express that write, frankly, shocking headlines that are putting their personal.
Do you think Daily Mail octogenarians are sending death threats to people?
Well, Ian,
it's probably not. I mean, I appreciate it's quite seductive to say that. Sorry. It's probably not coming from those quarters.
Well, the headlines are. It's written by the political editors of the Daily Mail.
Yeah, I mean, enemies of the people is, if you're a sort of a Brexiteer supporting paper, is probably quite apt journalistically, isn't it?
Well, it might seem apt to you, but if you were Anna Soubry.
I don't think putting that headline there is an instruction to give death threats to anyone, is it?
Well, it might not be for you or I, Ian, because you and I are sane of mind. People are not. Look at the guy that murdered Joe Cox last year. What about him? There are people going around.
Well, I doubt whether he'd read a newspaper. Probably some nefarious websites and YouTube videos would be more on the mark. Listen, Chris, I hear where you're coming from, and you're absolutely bang on. The idea, as Anna Soubry said, that a colleague of hers had to walk around their constituency, I think she said, with 6 armed plainclothes officers for protection. Kevin in Manchester. What are your thoughts, Kev? Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, Ian. I'm Irish, number one by birth, so I am a Remainer in my DNA. I came over here in 1988 to work, and I've set my roots here, my family here, and everything else. I'm just desperately sad about the whole situation and the way this country's gone, or seems to be going, to the dogs.
Does it feel chaotic from your perspective, or is it something more sinister than chaos?
There's a chaos at the heart of it. I think that most people, no matter what they voted for, feel deeply. But for me, the biggest thing is the rise of this insidious. Anna Soubry was talking about these people who somehow this whole process is unleashed.
Well, it's more than just anger. It's more than political disagreement. Yeah. It's now violence. What's the answer, Kevin? Do we do what Gina Miller said and have a second referendum?
I've always had very little faith in politicians, to be honest with you, and the way that the negotiations have been handled by the current government and the way that things are going through in Parliament, I just don't see there's any other way.
That is echoed by quite a lot of correspondents contacting us tonight. Kevin, I hear the frustration in his voice. Do you share? Craig is in Goulston. First-time caller. Welcome to the show, Craig. Hello.
Thank you, Ian. Hello.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I was really interested in the discussion between Stephen and Jason, particularly.
Yeah.
Stephen has hit the nail on the head. Jason has completely lost the plot. I voted. Yeah, sorry, but
did you vote to leave then?
Yeah, I did, and so did all of my family, 6 of them, and there was I didn't have any influence on that. They all came to their own conclusions, having done lots of research. They looked at the facts and they went with what they felt. The point with this is that we are looking at it in political terms. And the fact is, I'm an architect, I should say, and I sort of look at things firstly in buildings in a conceptual way. And the point with it is you look at it as a sort of overview, not in the nitty-gritty. And the overview is that I sort of looked at the country, thought about the sine wave, and thought that in time we will come good. We will become a great country. But the point with it is that we cannot deal with this all of this stuff that's going on in the background, these MPs are doing a complete disservice to the country on the basis that we need to allow Theresa May and her closest to do the deal. And that is not happening.
So you think that choppy waters, if you like, are part and parcel of what we voted for, so we shouldn't be surprised that it might be a bit turbulent, but ultimately it will come good?
Well, absolutely. And the fact is that this country, that we do a lot of stuff that's not reported. That, I mean, in our area, we're big in the offshore game, and we sort of do a lot of world-class design in semi-submersibles, offshore rigs and so on, and the technology that goes with oil exploration. But the thing with it, there's a whole lot more that is unreported. And what I don't like is the fact that we have to import, we do import lots of products that we could actually do ourselves.
Okay.
The big one at the moment.
Go on.
Sorry. The big one at the moment is the electric vehicles. We are leading the world in that technology.
So you sense that it's not that many of our callers and contributors this evening have talked to Tom Brake, for example, gave a whole list of why it's doom and gloom, and you depart company there. Listen, Craig, I'm moving on just to get more comment on, but thank you. Happy to take that view. Paul's in Barking. What is your reading of what happened today, Paul? Is that the end of leaving the EU as we knew it?
How's it going, Ian? I mean, it's really disappointing. I mean, we've been promised by Theresa May for the past... she's basically played us. She said for the past 24 months on the Brexit, on the Mansion House speech, we are leaving the customs union, we're leaving no freedom of movement, leaving the single market. She's blatantly lied to us. Your caller just about 3 calls ago mentioned it. They talk about, it's for the children, you've got to think of their future. I did this for my children and their grandchildren. I don't want our country turned into some sort of a state in Europe where you've just seen the example your caller just mentioned, that there's say example, like we've got no controls over our borders, no controls over our money, no controls over anything. You talk about these migrant boats where Spain had to accept a migrant boat today. The laws and rules of this country would be taken out. And I've done this for our country, and I've done it for my children, because I don't want to see this super state develop in a federal Europe where we've got no controls whatsoever.
So do you not have any faith in our members of Parliament then to sort this out? I mean, that's the whole point of our system, isn't it? The Parliament does clearly have an autonomy because it's there debating it. We haven't yet deferred that to Brussels.
Ian, they're going to take more controls now. This EU army, whatever, but they're going to take more and more controls. And what makes me laugh is that I watch a lot of the debate today in the House of Commons. You've got this arrogance of these Remainers. They're morally superior. They know better than the Brexiteers. I'll name and shaming. Stephen Doherty? Is he an MP for Labour? Stephen
Doherty, yes. We spoke to him a couple of days ago.
And what I saw his speech this afternoon, and what he's talking the way is, we've got to bring the country back together again. And I had a great Remainer, lovely gentleman in my constituency that passed away, and he didn't believe that. And what makes me laugh today is, Ian, you've got Laura Kunsberg, you've got a Remainer say, if Theresa May F's this and she F's that, the aggression comes out. They're all singing Kumbaya and singing around the trees, and they're kissing each other. And when it comes to Laura Kunsberg, F this, if she F this, swearing away like the troopers, they're aggressive and they're angry. And what it's been, Ian, it's been a campaign for 2 years with Gina Miller, with George Soros, with Richard Branson, with Tony Blair, with John Major, all the political establishment. You've got the American banks, the corporations. You can't fight this off, Ian. We're only working class people.
I hear that passion, and I think you've just made, frankly, a brilliant argument, Paul, and certainly your last point. But I've always thought the EU, far from being a kind of a socialist paradise where all people of different backgrounds, colours and nationalities come together, I think the prime reasoning, the raison d'etre of the EU is that it's a billionaire's playground. It's great for large corporations and corporate diktats, and as you say, cheap labour as well. I think that probably defines it better than this socialist paradise where everybody comes together. However, Paul, it is what it is, and we are sort of stuck in this kind of curious place that we've been for 4 or more decades, and to disrupt that for many people is not worth the hassle.
Ian, my parents come to this country, the UK, in the 1960s. I'm from Irish immigrants. I believe in immigration, but what I don't believe is unfairness, where you've got an EU citizen can walk into this country, maybe a Romanian labourer, but you're stopping a brain surgeon from India to come in. I wanted a free and fair policy to immigration. I'm all for immigration. I wanted to have our own money, spend our own people, and bring this nation up, because we are, Ian, we're losing our identity as a nation. Not in this sort of nationalistic way, but we are losing our identity as a country. We need to look after the people of this country, and I can't believe she sold us out after all that she promised us, Theresa May. She promised us she'll get us out of Europe, and she's let us down. There's two ways of resolving this, Ian. There's two reasons. Theresa May has to go. I'm not saying some violence or anything like that. We need to take to the streets and take this and get some resemblance of Brexit. Because this can't continue. The politicians can't overturn the democratic right of the 17.4 million, Ian. It's a disgraceful. Think about it. They've just thrown democracy straight into the bin.
So what about... OK, Paul, Gina Miller's point, put it back to the people then. Have another referendum.
Listen, Ian, we had the vote, and it's just, all right, if we win it next time, and say it's a 4 million vote, yes, 4 million clear, the Leave side win again, they'll ask for a third and a fourth. This political movement is started 78 years ago to unite Europe, and it's a juggernaut, Ian, yeah? And the base is so much behind it that it's very difficult to stop it. Now, we, as the people of this country, have to put a stop to it. We need to take to the streets, we need to demand the Brexit that the people voted for. This cannot continue, and what's going to happen is this: the whole EU superstate has to crumble before we can get out of it, because it's going to turn into a prison, Ian.
There's clearly anger out there. You're angry, Paul. Do you think there's going to be... You alluded to people taking to the streets. I mean, do you think it's going to get to that stage?
It's got to a stage, Ian, we have to take to the streets. There's no other way of getting this juggernaut to slow down and stop. We have got to protect our country, we've got to protect the people in it, and we've got to say no to these Eurocrats, these Europhiles that want to unite Europe, and the people of Europe don't want that. There's been calls out from Hungary and Poland and Italy and Spain and France. We don't want this united Europe. We want to be free people to do it. And I honestly believe as well, Ian, think I was conspiracy theory. Wait and see. I'll ring you back in 10 years' time, Ian. They'll crush freedom of speech. They'll crush freedom of expression. You have no free... Honestly, he's a lunatic. He's going crazy now. I'm telling you, Ian, the centres of this project will be closed down and shut up.
All right, listen, on that point, Paul, final question. What about the people that voted Remain?
Do you know what? You know who's lost the vote, Ian? Democracy has died. The Remains, I did this not for me.
Nearly as many people voted Remain as Brexit.
Yeah, but Ian, what they're doing is they're looking at Ian. They're not looking at the bigger picture. They're not looking at the future. You're saying about the EU. Just one last thing, Ian. You're saying about the EU. The EU ain't going to stand still. It's going to grow. It's going to take more powers. It's going to basically swallow up the United Kingdom. All they're thinking about into their laptops and their mobile phones, they're thinking about pounds and pence. It wasn't about GDP. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about wages. It was about this country and the future of this country and its people. And I honestly see the European Union as a growing juggernaut, going to swallow up the nations of Europe and make a superstate, which the people of Europe do not want.
OK, on that point. Paul, I tell you what, whichever way anybody voted, that is an incredibly passionate argument for getting out of the EU. Brilliantly put. Paul, thank you. I look forward to... It's going to call us back in 10 years' time. I'll probably be doing the weather on Classic FM in 10 years' time, but who knows. Let's go to Andrew in Halifax. Andrew, hello.
Hello, Ian.
Hi, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's as simple as this. The calculation is tonight the same as it has been ever since the vote, and it's been reinforced by the local elections, that if the Conservatives make it a Brexit in name only, then they will be out of power for not only a generation, but several generations, and deservedly so. And I say that as somebody that's voted Tory consistently all my life. I'd never, ever... vote them or entertain anything to do with the Conservative Party should they renege on this.
So you want them to carry it through, but did you not feel that there was a sort of an irredeemable scuppering from Grieve and Soubry and Co?
Well, possibly, I mean, if you listen to the interview that Jacob Rees-Mogg gave on the news tonight, it's possible that because the function of the executive moves at a pace quicker than that of the legislature, if the EU offers nothing and Parliament rejects it, then by the time it goes back to the EU and the to and fro-in, that the Article 50 period may have already expired and will be out with no deal. That's a possibility. It's not what I'd like to see, but
what do you think of the Soubries and the Greaves and the Clarks and co?
I think I put it to a work colleague today that I hope in 5 or 6 years' time, people like Soubry and Grieve are serving up egg and chips in a transport cafe, because not only is it something that they would richly deserve, but they can also then get to mix with the sort of people they've spent the last 2 years looking down their noses at.
It's a interesting one to finish on. Andrew, thank you for that. Again, more great passion here. Cracking callers tonight. 0345 6060 973. Anna Soubry will be knocking out egg and chips down there at the Clackett Lane services. That's off the M25. What an interesting notion. In a moment, we'll speak to the prominent Conservative Brexiteer Andrew Rosindell. Is he as disappointed as our last two callers with his colleagues down there in Westminster? We'll continue to take your calls on this. Let me just tell you where I marked my territory on this one a little earlier. Have we now witnessed the beginning of the end of Britain's journey out of the EU? It's clearly not going to look. This is my point. The Brexit is not going to look how people thought it was going to look. Can we now all conclude that? It's going to be a very different thing, whether it's the Norway option, which will upset people no end, particularly our last but one caller there who said, no, we have to have control over these things. Yes, we need immigration. We just need to control what immigration was his point. So things like that, the Norway option will be no good to people like that. Your thoughts? So many calls coming in on this. Right back with you in a couple of moments. I'm about to speak to Andrew Rosindell on this as well. Couple of the front pages. The Sun, may the farce be with you, is their headline. This is reference to what we're talking about here. The PM giving in to those Remainers is one way to look at it. May wins the day is the I. The Times, MPs win say over Brexit deal as Tory rebels force a climb down. Similarly, Financial Times, Tory rebels force May into Brexit climb down. An interesting front page on the Telegraph. They've got this story that 3 ministers have held talks with an anti-Brexit campaign group which wants them to back a second EU referendum in defiance of the government, it's been claimed. This comes after Philip Lee, the Justice Minister, resigned, of course. This is Best for Britain, the group we're talking about here, the one funded by the billionaire financier George Soros. Let's speak with Andrew Rosindell, prominent Brexiteer and Conservative MP for Romford. Andrew Rosindell, good evening.
Good evening, Ian.
Just to pick up on that front page there on the Telegraph, from a Brexiteer point of view, this is deeply worrying stuff, isn't it?
Well, I haven't seen the front page of the Telegraph as yet, but I'm not worried at all. I think actually what's happened is I do apologise.
All right.
Sorry, something just suddenly came on there. I don't think that Brexiteers are worried at all. In fact, the government won every single vote today, and also the main question about actually having this meaningful vote was rejected substantially with hardly any rebels at all. So actually it's a pretty good day for the government and a pretty good day for those of us who want a clean break from the EU.
You could say it's a pretty good date for Barnier and co, because they've been handed an open goal, surely.
Well, what do you mean by that? How have they been handed an open goal?
Well, in the event of a no deal, which of course they now have every incentive to offer, the worst set of scenarios, whether it's money, whether it's open borders, freedom of movement, that then goes back to you guys on the green benches, and there's enough of you there to vote it down. Ergo, another referendum.
Well, they're a long way from having another referendum, Ian. What actually it would mean if the deal that Theresa May came back with wasn't acceptable to Parliament, what it would effectively mean is that on the 29th of March next year, Britain will be leaving the European Union with no agreement. So it doesn't really give Mr Barnier any leeway at all. What it does mean is that everyone's minds have got to be focused on making sure there is a sensible deal. We want to have arrangements whereby Britain and Europe can work together, can trade with each other, can have sensible arrangements to cooperate in the future. We all have a vested interest in that, whether EU countries or ourselves. What we don't want is a messy breakup where actually the people we're meant to serve will be suffering.
But if Theresa May has to go to Parliament with no deal, then we know which way that vote would go. Consequently, the government collapses, surely.
No, then we leave the European Union without a deal.
End of. That's it. No deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the end of the world, actually. And I think this is all being massively overplayed by everybody. The reality is that we don't have deals with most countries in the world, yet we can still trade with them, we can still work with them and cooperate with them. The truth is that once we're unshackled from this control of the European Union, we can actually do our own thing and make our own decisions and actually cooperate globally again, which we can't do whilst we're in the EU.
But if if MPs are having a vote on whether Britain should leave the EU without a deal, and they don't vote in favour of that, then surely Theresa May doesn't then just go and leave the following year. That's an implication.
We've already invoked Article 50. We're leaving on the 29th of March next year. So if they don't like the agreement that Theresa May comes back with, then unless in a very short space of time they can come out with a better agreement, then on the 29th of March, we're leaving.
So what's the point of the concession?
The point of the concession is to give Theresa May the opportunity to go into the negotiations with the ability to actually do the job and then come back with a sensible arrangement rather than to tie her hands now.
But by giving that concession, surely the EU are not going to offer a sensible arrangement. They're just going to offer a rubbish deal.
No, had the vote been lost, then that would have been the case. Now, Theresa still has the opportunity to go in and play a strong hand for Britain.
But there are concessions. She's won, but with concessions, and that's the problem. I've got callers tonight, Andrew, saying that Dominic Grieve is a hero. He scuppered Brexit.
I don't believe that for 1 second. The reality is that Theresa May now has the opportunity to go into those negotiations from a position of strength, and she's going to try to get the very best possible arrangement for the United Kingdom. If the EU is sensible, they will drop all this political posturing and they will start to work with us in a way that benefits both the EU and the United Kingdom. And I think that's what they'll eventually do, because we have a huge trade deficit, or they have a huge trade deficit with us. They need our markets. We would like to have access to theirs. It benefits everybody. And get the politics out of the way and have a sensible bilateral agreement, which will mean that all of our people can continue to trade and prosper together.
Do you think Anna Soubry and Ken Clarke and Grieve and many others are just going to shut up now?
Well, Ken Clarke and Anna Soubry rebelled.
Yeah, they voted against the government.
Yeah, but the others didn't. You know, this is a victory for Theresa May. This is a victory for those who want to keep the government on the right path towards a clean, strong Brexit in the interests of Britain.
Well, it's a kind of Pyrrhic victory, really, isn't it?
Not want to be derailed. The House of Lords amendments would have derailed the whole thing. That has been stopped. We're now back on track.
Gina Miller, I'm sure you're a huge fan, said on this programme this evening, Andrew Rosindale, that she's fed up with you lot in Parliament, which is kind of interesting since she wanted it to go back to Parliament, and it should go back to the people, this vote.
Well, Gina Miller has never been elected to anything in her life, and frankly, I don't know why so many people take notice of what this woman says. She has no elected position.
Well, you were only debating today because she went to court.
No, not at all. We were debating invoking Article 50 because she went to court, and that is what we did, and we voted it through overwhelmingly, and then we fought a general election on the basis of continuing down that road. And 85% of people voted for parties that were committed to Brexit. So all Gina Miller did was to ensure that it went through Parliament rather than was decided through the royal prerogative, which traditionally is what prime ministers have been able to do when it comes to treaties. So actually, Gina Miller has nothing to do with what's happening today. This is the withdrawal bill, and this gives us the opportunity to integrate EU law into British law, which means we then control what we do in our own country.
So you don't think, final question, Andrew Rosendale, you don't think this has weakened the Prime Minister's leadership?
It's news to me. I mean, we all voted with the Prime Minister, and there's a strong, I can tell you, Ian, there is a mood tonight in Parliament that Brexit is happening. We're edging towards it. OK, there's hurdles on the way, there's bumps in the road, but on the 29th of March, and you heard it from me tonight, people in London need to know this, on the 29th of March, Britain will no longer be in the EU. We may still be entangled into one or two bits of it, but gradually, step by step, we are untangling ourselves, and eventually, and in the not-too-distant future, we will be completely free of this thing. And then we can do our own thing in the world again, which is what we've always done throughout our history.
Andrew Rosendale, thank you. There it is, absolute, confident, unequivocal stuff from him. He's not bothered at all by the scupperers. Perfectly relaxed, we're going, end of. Really? I think that's called misplaced optimism. Barry is in Woolwich. What are your thoughts, Barry?
Hi there. I know I haven't got much time. See, my issue is that sort of dogged entrenchment that Andrew Rosendale displays, it shows me that common sense has left the room. Right? No one's really thinking about the details of what we want out of Brexit, how we're going to get a decent Brexit, or anything. I mean, if we're going to do Brexit, right? That's been decided. All right, fine. How are we going to do it? What is going to happen? You can't give unilateral power to a single person to take away any law that they so choose. We wanted Parliament to be sovereign, not the Prime Minister to be a dictator. They're two completely different things. So, I mean, if you're going to sit there, I mean, additionally, sorry, right, from what I understand, yeah, the concessions that Theresa May gave today were basically duplicitous agreements to do something but not do something. And she said that, I'll give you clause A and B out of this amendment. But then she's got to put it in writing. And if she doesn't put it in writing, then they will vote against her.
Of course they will. And they will come back and do this time and time again.
Yes, and which will totally derail everything. And the thing is, my issue is that common sense means that you vote for what is correct, or you make you express your opinion based upon the facts. Now, if they've sat there, discussed the facts, how can those very self-same Tories ignore those facts and then vote with the government at the same time? That is an abdication, a direct abdication of all responsibility.
And of course you have the extraordinary situation where the MPs that went in to see Theresa May, despite the position she was taking, she would have been probably in agreement with those MPs in her heart as a Remainer. Barry, get great balance on this. Thank you. I'll talk to Matthew in Heathrow in just a second. Great calls coming in. More from you in just a second. A lot of confusion here. So Rosendale was perfectly, and I'll be educated on this if I've missed something crucial in this. The concession that they got this evening essentially means that MPs will get a vote whether Britain should leave the EU without a deal. The concession that whether Britain should leave the EU without a deal. So the EU throw up, as Ian Martin said, come December, they say we want 40 billion quid, another 6 billion every year, and free movement. That then goes back to Parliament. They say this is a rubbish deal. We're not going to vote on that. We're going to vote against that. And Rosendale's contention is that doesn't matter because come March 2019, we're leaving anyway. That usurps everything. So what would be the point then of it going back to Parliament to have a vote on whether to accept no deal? 0345 6060 973. I mean, I work in a newsroom here with quite a lot of senior and very experienced journalists, and there's a lot of us scratching our head on this one. Dave in Kingston says, what an amazing call from Paul. So accurately portrays the level of betrayal either by incompetence or design of our political class that are locked into the EU gravy train for the rich. Thank you, Dave, for that. Ian in Whittam says, Norway's option is probably the best of all bad options, still has freedom of movement, no benefit over being in the EU, only worse, as we have no say in future rules. Has it come down to this, that the best we can get is the Norway deal, which is worse for our country, plus a more divided population, a shambles, going to leave less budget and worse NHS. Wow. Cheers, Ian, for that. Let's go to Matthew in Heathrow. Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Ian. Basically, I mean, I think Donald Green is a hero in what he's done today. Like Gina Miller, I mean, basically, he's ensured now we're not going to be leaving without no deal, and that's what we need for business. It's now given that surety that if we don't get this free trade deal, basically it's going to go back to Parliament and they're going to vote to extend Article 50.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But Andrew Rosendale, as you will have heard, said, no, that doesn't matter because we're leaving anyway.
But I think he's on a different planet by the sound of it.
Well, either he's not understood his own parliamentary system, or I've not understood his, along with yourself, Matthew. As far as I can see this, Rosendale is slightly off the mark on this one, because surely a vote against leaving with no deal would have to count for something. It puts them back in the negotiating room.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there is no deal there, I mean, we're going to need more time for trade. I mean, I'm involved in transport, and basically, if we're going to go to WTO rules, what will be the only thing? We're going to need a couple of years to get those structures in place to do it. And obviously, there's a Northern Ireland issue where I think by that time, the Conservatives are going to dump the DUP and we're going to have a border in the North Sea, and hopefully Northern Ireland will get the free deal. But I think there's a chance the whole UK might get this free trade deal. If not, I mean, the good thing is the no deal option, I think, is now off the table.
Off the table, yeah. That's how it certainly seems to me. What's your gut reaction, Matthew, on this? Where do you imagine in 1 year's time? So we're past the March leaving scenario. There's still obviously other bits and pieces to attend to, but where do you imagine we might be?
Well, I think they are going to offer us a free trade deal. It's going to cost us money. We're going to have to pay for something, and possibly there is going to be some sort of controlled immigration, what we're going to agree. But hopefully we'll get that transition period to actually get those structures in place, what we need to put to achieve it. And I mean, I think it is going to be positive. I mean, because the hard Brexit is going to be not good for anyone, and we're not going to have to be able to do trade deals with the rest of the world.
Yeah, and I think today, I think it was summed up by Tom McTaggart, the journalist that we spoke to at the beginning. What's essentially happened today is it's either no Brexit or a soft Brexit.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been trading with Europe for over 40 years. We can't just overnight or over, 2 years be, for March, be ready to leave with no deal. So, it's got to be a softly approach, and yeah, that is a soft Brexit. We've got to secure the trade we're already doing with Europe, and then we could slowly start building other trade with the rest of the world. It's going to take time to organise.
Yep. Okay, fair point. Matthew, great call. Thank you. Let's go to Julie in Coventry. What are you making of this, Julie?
Well, I'm a bit confused now after hearing you speak to the last member. I thought I'd got it.
We're all confused, Julie. The country's confused. MPs are confused. Everyone's confused. It's like we're in a never-ending Monty Python sketch.
What worries me is I don't think, unless we have the Brexit, and it's no good people, the Anna Soubras, etc., saying we didn't know what we were voting for. We did know what we were voting for. We were told what we were voting for. We were told we were going to be leaving the customs union and the single market. I had no doubt. I had no Olga from Russia with a gun to my head when I put my cross in the box. So scare tactics, it's all Project Fear. But unless I think we leave in a reasonable kind of way, as in what we voted for, democracy will have gone out the window. Now, I know that you've got people, the Remainers, saying, no, we want another vote. Well, it wasn't the best of three. We voted, and that should happen, because there's such a lot of people now. I know that people have swayed either way. Some people are now Remainers, and that will vice versa. However, at least it was democratic when we voted. And if it's taken to another vote, whichever way it goes, democracy has gone out the window, and I don't think the country will ever be able to be pulled together again. Because there's a lot of people who voted Remain who can see democracy. And if we don't get it...
You think people... I mean, Paul, our previous caller, said people will be on the streets protesting over this.
I would. I'd be absolutely... Even to take it to another vote. I don't think... We voted. And I know they say it was close. There was over 1 million people difference.
Yeah.
It wasn't just out
That's
of
a lot. That's a lot of people if you put them in your front room, isn't it? You're right.
Yes. Over 1 million people.
Okay, so there was, although some people say, Julie, not just with this referendum, that referenda should have a greater gap. It should be a 2/3 win, etc. But that's another debate. Julie, thank you for that. Trino Vantes on Twitter says, and I think we're on the same page here, surely the vote means we either leave with a negotiated deal or no deal. Either way, we leave in March 2019, or have I misunderstood? Well, but there's a contradiction in that, isn't there? Because that's sort of how I understood it. But if it goes back to Parliament, no, we have no deal. What do you think? MPs, do you want to vote for this? No, you don't want to vote for this. Well, surely we then go back and renegotiate. If you go back and renegotiate, how can we guarantee that negotiation can be successful by March 2019, if it's only happening at the end of the year? That's where the confusion steps in. I'm sure somebody can beautifully explain this to us. Jack's in Birmingham. What are you thinking, Jack? Good evening.
You're right there. It's getting to the point now where it's just getting, like, why are people even caring anymore? Like, it's to the point now where you can literally just wake up in the morning and you can expect something to be in the media about how the MPs are, not meeting the will of the people, and I pretty much sigh every single day that I'm looking at the news now. So
you're on the lines of, hang on, there was a referendum, it's all rather simple, the Leave lot won it, follow it through Westminster, end of. That's your contention. There's really nothing to see here, it's quite simple.
Yeah, I was a Leave voter myself. Obviously, there'll be individuals that will say that I didn't know what I was voting for, blah, blah, blah. Same old story, different day. You hear it all before. You had a call that was on earlier, I apologise, I can't remember your name, but we're saying that people are that will end up getting onto the streets, etc.
Yeah, that was Paul.
Paul. Apologies, Paul. Paul, to be honest, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if I woke up tomorrow and saw individuals that have got to the point now where they've got that threaders about how the whole thing is going on.
Can you understand, though, Jack? There is a sense, and this is now being compounded by some MPs, there is a sense that there is a betrayal of that vote in 2016. So, it may well...
100%. It is a betrayal.
Would you be on the streets with Paul?
Well, I wouldn't be able to, unfortunately, with my job. It wouldn't be the most wise of things. But if I hadn't had the restraints of the job that I do, then
you're not head of stopping protests at Westminster, are you?
No, unfortunately not.
I won't pursue it. But I take your point, Jack. And so it's a dark day in your world for democracy.
It's an absolute dark. It's the darkest turn like you could ever have in democracy. It is quite clear that the will of the people have not been followed. And just as a quick final point, that if I would say so, that if brace yourself, people, I'm going to you can put your tinfoil hats on for a moment here if you want. But I honestly, in one way, I could see this as it just being a total and utter stall tactic. It's literally going to get to the point where individuals, like people are saying this now, that it's just getting to the point where people are just going to go, well, do you know what's the point? And if you were to be a conspiracy theorist type person, then I can understand that point of view. I hope that doesn't happen, but
the possibility is there. Okay, well, we'll leave that hanging, Jack. It's rather intriguing stuff. Thank you, Jack in Birmingham. We're all wondering, what does Jack do for a living? He's either a cop or maybe he works at that fish and chip place, pie and mash place that Anna Subra is going to work at. Maybe it's that. If you were listening earlier, that makes total sense. If you weren't, you're probably thinking, what the... or it was David Davis calling through a voice box. I don't know. It could be. Who could it be? But he won't be on the streets because of his job, but he understands the principle of those that will. You could, of course, throw this completely on its head and say, well, actually, the referendum, whether you see it as advisory, which, of course, I know is a very uncomfortable way for many people to articulate or define, rather, the result. People saw it as definitive, not as just an advisory thing. Many people see it as the latter. But either way, I mean, the fact that our Parliament would debate a referendum, surely there's nothing, it was never going to be a case of, oh yes, we voted to leave, bang, we leave. There was always going to be a process, a negotiation. That, I think we all knew that, didn't we? And our Parliament is doing that. So we still have sovereignty, the very thing that some Brexiteers thought we didn't have. It's clearly there, and it's up in action today, even if you don't like what you saw. The fact is that was the UK Parliament, not the EU Parliament in Brussels. By the way, I'm going to break the cardinal rule in the next section when we depart from this. I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but we are going to do it, and there's a reason for doing it. Parking tickets. I don't just want you to... I don't want the, well, I was right, parts on double yellows. And he said it was 2 o'clock. I don't want that, okay? It was definitely 10-2. There's more to this. I'll tell you more about it and why in a few moments' time. Let's go to Berkshire. Michael. How you doing, Michael?
Hi, Ian. I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Yeah, very well, thanks. What are your thoughts on events today down there in the mother of all parliaments?
My point is more directed towards Remainers as a whole, and my big question to them is, what do they think is going to come of Britain if Britain fails? I mean, well, Brexit fails. Because what we're going to be left with is a nation of probably multiple generations who are going to be completely disconnected from democracy, and the civil unrest is going to be of such a scale that I wouldn't be surprised with riots, to be perfectly honest. I mean, is that something the Remainers really want to deal with? Like, let's be honest, that's where it's going to go towards.
So you think it's I mean, there's no way that people are just going to ignore this. It's not going to just go away over time.
Oh God, no. No, this is of such a magnitude. Like, this is literally, British people have decided our future here. And if this gets scuppered, that's going to affect generations for years to come. Like, to the point it could be like 3 generations worth of the populace that are just not even going to bother with
Yeah, I hear that, but the Remainer argument, and some Brexiteers, is that it's only now we're dissecting the finer points of Brexit and debating and chewing the fat over the implications of Brexit that we can really get a clearer picture of what it means. And whichever way you choose to view this, most people who voted in the referendum certainly couldn't have had the picture then that they have now, and therefore that's a significant shift on a decision this big.
True. I mean, I never expected Brexit. I don't think anybody would have expected Brexit to go the way that it has. I mean, no thanks to the government in power, thank you. But it's one of those things where it doesn't matter how, like, for the British people, it doesn't matter how difficult it is. It doesn't matter what the obstacles are. The British people have made the decision and they expect the government to deliver on it regardless of what comes up. I mean, yeah, if there have to be compromises in some positions, and I don't think many Brexiteers would be too against that, but as long as the core principle of what they voted for actually happens, they'll be okay with it, as long as the core things are done. But Remainers they don't care. They want to stay in. Like, yeah, they have some good arguments about the hit to the economy, and I think most Brexiteers acknowledge that that's going to happen. But again, this is democracy at its core. Like, if the government and Remainers get their way and we end up staying in the EU, we have Brexit in name only, I think most Brexiteers are smart enough to realise that they're not getting what they vote for, and democracy is going to be completely meaningless to them, and they're going to pass it on to their kids.
What sort of age group are you in, Michael?
Hello? Sorry?
Yeah, what sort of age group are you in?
Oh, I'm 27.
Okay, I thought you were probably in that bracket. Is your view echoed by most people of similar age, 27?
No. I do come across people of my age online who think the same way I do, but I think it's fair to say most people of my age did vote Remain.
Did vote Remain, of course. No, I only asked for that reason, not being nosy. Michael, thank you for that. This one in from Fee, who says, a few months ago, Gina Miller said she didn't want another referendum after months of hindering the process. She and others, like her, are now calling for one. Surprise, surprise. That was the plan from the start. I put that to her, of course, and she denied it. In fact, she got a little bit shirty at that suggestion. Brian in Stockton-on-Tees. Hello, Brian.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. What are you thinking?
Well, it's a farce. Every day goes on, and Theresa May is losing more and more credibility. She come out, she said Brexit's Brexit, all the time, in public, Brexit's Brexit, out the customs union, no, any form of customs union, out the single market, and she's doing this behind the scenes. I mean, today she's had to call 13 rebels behind closed doors and try and talk them round. She's never ever called them in public, Ian.
The problem
what is the woman
that she agrees with those rebels in her heart.
Well, not by public, but she's losing credibility if that's the case.
Yeah.
Because in public she has said Brexit is Brexit. Every time she's made a speech without the both foot single market customs, as I've said, and now it is dragging on. She can't pick either side, can she? She's different. She can't make a decision on anything. She's like a rabbit caught in headlights. So do you think, I mean, where does it go then from here? If you don't think she can make a decision, who's going to be making those decisions? It just went too far now. It's stalemate. We have to now either crash out or we need another general election so one side can get power. You know, so you can get a vote through. You can't get a vote through. She should have thought these rebels out when they first went abroad to see Barnier, Soulbury, Clarks and all them. All right, listen, on that point, Brian, I'm just going to move on to get some more comment in. Hear the frustration, though. Andy in Manchester, what do you think, Andy?
Hi. So Brian's there talking about MPs. So I've been looking at the EU website for months. I've got friends of mine saying, I'm in Manchester, we don't want people coming from the EU taking our jobs. If you go on the EU website, put in free movement of workers, it says free movement of workers, not free movement from EU to come to England and do nothing. And then if you go down and it just says, it says migrant workers' right to reside for more than 3 months. Migrant workers. Yeah, there is, of course, whichever way you look at it, there are clearly lots of people that have exercised their legal right to move to another country. Yeah, but it's legal right to work. It's not legal right to go to another country and stay. It says it there. Yeah, I don't think many people from the EU have just come here to stay. They usually come to work. Well, in my part of Manchester, there are various EU workers who work in car washes. Well, on my main road where I live in Manchester, there are 5 car washes within a mile and a half. Yeah. And if you go there and you say, £5, and they don't understand what you're saying, and I'm guessing these people, I know these people live maybe 6 or 7 to a 2-bedroom terrace, and these people won't be paying tax. And it's not there being, okay. So you're saying that as a country, we're not employing the rules as set down by the EU? Exactly. I've got friends who voted to leave, and I said, guys, look on the EU website. It says if you go to any other country, it will say, come to England. So on the point, I get your drift. So your point is, I think that, in fact, we already have more control over immigration than some people think, but we're not exercising it. Andy, thank you for that. Paul is in Bognor Regis. Paul, we've not got long, Paul, but I'm sure you can do it. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think she's treading on dangerous ground because she's going against people's wishes of their vote. I haven't gone for Brexit. I didn't vote because I know she wouldn't go through with anything. And she's a very irresponsible person for the tweets she's put out today about Saturday's march, and she's underestimating the British people. That's what I've got to pick on. There's going to be murders on the street if she's what she's doing. Okay, well, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I mean, I certainly hear your point about protest. Paul, thank you. Another disappointed Brexiteer, and I think if you did vote that way, you probably would be when you
drill down on what's been agreed today, I think it is devastating for Brexiteers, and probably rather good news for Remainers. I think the one thing I think we can all conclude is that Brexit is never ever going to happen in the form you originally thought. It's dead in that respect. Different territory in the next section. Don't you be going anywhere. How private parking firms issue thousands of unfair £100 tickets because they think you won't bother to fight them. That's next. I know I've said this before, but it's a subject that does go with a little bit of a caveat, because there's certain rules, or unwritten rules, in phone-in and speech radio that it's usually advisable to adhere to for a whole bunch of reasons. Debates that will be so darn circular they'll get you nowhere. Issues that have been done to death. I mean, you feel like that about Brexit, but of course there's a different crucial element on that. Others that simply don't slice it for a whole variety of reasons. And one of them is usually, well, there's two, in fact, that come under a similar umbrella. One is speeding tickets, and the other is parking tickets. It's a little bit like, when and I've done this as a radio presenter, you have a psychic come on your show. I had that Derek Akora fella on a couple of times. That was really fascinating. And the switchboards go nuts. I mean, it's a slightly different vibe when you have a psychic on, because you might listen, even if you're not the one getting the psychic reading, you might listen out of sheer intrigue or scepticism or whatever and enjoy it at a different level. Horoscopes is a better example. I've never done a horoscope phone-in, even though I know Russell Grant and he's a lovely man, and I've had him on the show, but I've never actually had it. You will have a switchboard absolutely rammed from people who want... We used to have a numerologist, a fabulous woman called Meg Pringle Adamson, many years ago, used to come on the programme. She was a numerologist, and actually I think you give your birth date, and from your birth date and your name you add letters, and it's got some sort of Pythagorean root to it, and you explain someone's, not their future, their state. All of this stuff is very interesting if you're the person getting the reading, but not very interesting to the wider listening public. And similarly, if you get too bogged down with speeding tickets, then you can sort of end up in that place. But I think, bearing in mind that every single survey in British radio has shown that here on Late Nights on LBC, we have the most astute and intelligent listeners. They've done all the radio shows around the country to see who's got the brightest listeners. And I think we win hands down on this programme. I mean, Humphrey's lot are as thick as, believe me. It's a grim picture over there at the Beeb. It's not clever. So let's do this on a certain level, because I do want to hear your stories, and it's about the cancelled ticket as distinct from, and getting the ticket cancelled, because listen to this. These are parking firms that simply they know they're flouting the law when they hand out the tickets, because it's not illegal to hand out the tickets, because you just appeal it, and if it's wrong, and clearly wrong, they go, oh, okay. But they work on the basis that most people don't appeal it. Most people just can't be bothered. Or more probably, have you ever done this one? Got a parking ticket, you knew you were absolutely in the clear, and you think, oh, I'll appeal that, and then you run out of time for the appeal. By the time you've remembered it again, you go, where's the ticket? And you hunt around, and it's there somewhere in that drawer in the kitchen, and you eventually find it, and you realise you had to appeal it within X amount of days, and you think, oh, blow it, I can't be bothered, I'll just pay the 40 quid. It's not 40 quid anymore in many places, is it? It's more like 80 quid or 100 quid. Let me throw the lines open on this right now, because I'm sure you've got a story of utter parking injustice, and you did fight it, but it wasn't easy, but you got there in the end, and you got the money back. 0345 6060 973. And I don't know whether we can safely say you'd like to think that your local authority parking people are a different outfit from the private ones. The local authority are doing it for reasons of good, to keep the roads running and parking spaces clear, and to instil an element of parking fairness. I don't think that is the case partly because the local authority tend to employ a private company to do it anyway. But there's one company, one firm, Smart Parking. Listen to this. Out of 8,900 tickets last year, how many do you think they cancelled? Out of 8,900 tickets. I would have thought I would have gone for 10%. 8,900 10%, that seems about right. Out of 8,900 tickets, they cancelled 75% of them. 6,772 tickets out of 8,900 were cancelled. The parking watchdog, Poplar, said that overall 37% of appeals saw firms back down, with a further 13% ruled in favour of the customer. Meanwhile, another 8,814 lost at appeal stage, meaning customers won more than half of all cases taken to court. The overall number of appeals also rose by more than a quarter, 26%. with 62,844 being disputed. Sir Greg Knight, who's a Tory MP, said there's no doubt about it, there is an element of trying it on. Some of these car parks with expectations that the motorist won't challenge the ticket. A spokesman for the British Parking Association said the high number of withdrawal appeals in 2017 was investigated by the BPA and appropriate action was taken. Have you been there? Is that you? Were you the person on the receiving end? I'm going to try not to lose my voice here. Don't forget, tomorrow, Nick Ferrari, or later today, Nick Ferrari at breakfast. A pilot has been sent to prison for being 4 times the drink drive limit whilst in the cockpit. Got 8 months, and of course he'll never fly again. Nick will discuss that story. And, as we've been talking this evening, with the government offering last-minute concessions to Conservative rebels, Nick will ask whether this will spell the end of Brexit. That's Nick Ferrari at breakfast tomorrow morning from 7 here on LBC. Let's get back into the territory we were talking about here. It is the ultimate injustice of the parking ticket that should never have been issued. And just before you start throwing perhaps your parking ticket at the radio thinking, why are you talking about parking tickets? It's actually the appeal process that I'm intrigued to talk about here, and how successful you were after it was revealed that one firm alone, out of 8,900 tickets last year, cancelled 75% of them. Partly because one assumes, or certainly an MP assumes, that in some respects they were trying it on. Let's give out the ticket. We know you were but going through the grim process of appealing it is not always straightforward stuff. Paul is in Rotherhithe. Paul, hello.
Yeah, good evening, Ian.
Hi, Paul.
Hello, mate. Yeah, just one that happened to me a few years back. I'm a licensed cab driver, and what I did, I made a mistake. I parked on this little 2-cab rank in Wells Street, just off Oxford Street there, but it didn't become a rank until midnight, till 6 a.m. So I put on it during the afternoon. I ended up getting a ticket. Thought, well, down to me. But when I read the ticket, the operative had actually put down a completely different street.
Oh, really?
Where it was. Yeah, he put Berners Street down instead of Wells Street. So I thought, well, that's my get out of jail free, didn't it? But do you know what? Westminster Council, they would not let it go. I proved it to them. I said, you've made a mistake, just rip it up and just put it down to experience. No, it ended up at Lambeth County Court, and after all that time, do you know what? They didn't even have the audacity to come out and defend it.
So they did, yeah, I hear this. They didn't even show up.
Didn't even show up. The judge had to look at all the evidence, the photos. I said, it never happened. Never happened in Berners Street. I was in Wells Street.
It's a completely... How did they... I mean, for some people, you can probably take it on the chin, Paul, even though it was frustrating, but for some people, that would have been sleepless nights, the thought they were going through a legal process. Somebody like my mum would have been terrified of going through that system.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky because I belong to a trade body, and I got legal advice from them. They said, fight it all the way. You cannot lose it because the contravention never actually happened.
Did they have photographic evidence?
Yeah, exactly. They had photographic evidence of me parked on Wells Street, but the ticket was issued in Berners Street.
And you knew that I mean, some would say it's a technicality, and you were lucky, Paul.
Yep. Well, not lucky. I mean, they've got to be whiter than white. Haven't they?
Of course they have, because they want you to be whiter than white. There's no margin of error when you get it wrong, so they can't get it wrong, and the rules state that you have to fill out the ticket correctly. Why could they not have identified that early doors?
Don't know. No, they just obviously... He just made the mistake, the operative. He just put Berners Street down, and, and the way the law stands, I did not commit any offence in Berners Street because I wasn't there. I was in Wells Street.
What was the process from the issuing of the ticket to you turning up at the county court? What was the length of time?
Oh, I mean, again, it's quite a while ago now. I can't even remember whether there was... I don't think there was the adjudicator at the time, but anyway, it was just constant appeals, and...
But I mean, the length of time you had to go through was over a period of months, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And when it got to court stage, just said...
They weren't even there.
And they didn't even bother turning up. King versus Westminster, no one answered, apart from me.
So just you and the judge sitting there?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. I showed him the evidence. He went, absolutely. Off you go, Mr. King.
Done deal. I like it. Paul, thank you for that. 0345 6060 973. Of course, he did eventually get the thing overturned. What's the process? Or what happens when, even when you go to the adjudicator, despite what you believe is unequivocal evidence to the contrary, the adjudicator finds against you? Where do you go from there? I suppose you then... I mean, you could keep pursuing it. Then, of course, the longer you're pursuing it, there's potential, I think, for other costs to be added, so there might be an expense that you have to incur that wasn't there before. Simon in Hythe says, what I'd like to know is the latest regulations regarding the use of our personal data and the requirement now for us to give permission for our data to be shared. How then does this affect the DVLA with regards to sharing our data, addresses, for example, with private parking companies? That's a cracking point. I've got a funny feeling that in the last couple... This is all the whole GDPR stuff, isn't it? We've been getting all those emails and texts about. I'm pretty sure... I'm 60% sure that in the last couple of weeks I heard somebody raise this point. I can't remember how. I know that the DVLA sell our data. It's like £1 an address or something. So if you're a parking company, the DVLA make a few quid out of it. But does that not breach all of that whole personal data now? It's kind of gone against the journey you would have imagined it's gone on. The laissez-faire, anybody can have access to anything, they can bombard you with this, that and the other. It's just the way business works in the 21st century. Now they've gone the other way and cut everything off, which in a curious way is not good for small businesses. But yeah, where does that leave the DVLA? Sue is in Staines. Hello, Sue.
Hi, Ian. How are you? Hello?
Hi, Sue. What are your thoughts?
Hi. I successfully challenged a ticket once.
Yep.
I got a ticket for parking on the pavement, and how I was actually parked, my rear tyre was slightly touching the pavement.
Okay, so you weren't parked on the pavement. There was
no.
A little bit of rubber was raised on a bit of curb.
Exactly.
Yep.
Minutely typical women's parking. But
no gender stereotyping on here, sister.
No, I know. I can say it because I'm a woman. I'm only joking.
Of course.
But I challenged it, and I wrote to them, and I said, look, the reason this parking violation is there is so that people that park on the pavement if they're obstructing wheelchairs or pushchairs getting past. I said I wasn't obstructing anybody at all. There was no reason for this ticket to be issued. I didn't even have a photograph. I don't know why I didn't take one. And they accepted it straight away. I wrote to the local paper as well, and I told them about it.
Yeah. And
they then got a spokesperson from the parking department to give their opinion, and they said, we're reviewing our policy on this now.
Was there a point, were you always going to challenge it?
Oh, yeah, because they were clearly in the wrong. But to be honest, like your last caller said, I would challenge anything, because the chances are they won't turn up at court. But, in this case, I knew I was completely in the right. It was just an overzealous parking attendant that probably just didn't have many tickets that day and thought,
I'm going to get in trouble if I don't. If I don't. I mean, it's a curious old job, isn't it? Going around giving out, asking, essentially taking money off people under false pretenses.
I know.
By making up a story about something they didn't do.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand why that regulation is there, and because I understood why it was there, I understood that I wasn't violating it.
Yeah.
So I do think it's worth challenging these things.
It is, but you do wonder. I mean, even if they gave out 5,000 across the country, 5,000 tickets were given out in similar circumstances to your own, and 75% of people successfully challenged it, that still means 25% didn't. So someone's made clearly a few quid just on that one version of an offence.
Yeah, because maybe some people, if they've just got the money and they just don't want the hassle, I mean, 40 quid doesn't sound like a lot of money to some people.
But it's a game-changing amount of money to some people. If you budget within, to the nearest pound, 40 quid can scupper your next month's poll tax, council tax, or your whatever bill it is, and then it becomes that kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul scenario.
Exactly. It takes no longer to fill out a challenge than it does to write a cheque to them.
Yeah.
So you might as well, challenge it if you think you're right, and if you're not sure, challenge it anyway.
Good advice. Great stuff. Sue, thank you for that. Sue in Staines. That's it. Challenge it anyway. Just challenge. Lee's in Paddington. What's going on, Lee?
Oh, 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
I had a bailiff turn up at the door. I was at work. My daughter rings up crying. He's clamped my car, and he's coming back to get it. I said, what for? 17 tickets in 2016 and 2017 regarding the dart charge.
Right.
So I said...
This is the Dartford Tunnel, for those who don't know.
Yeah. So I turned around and said, well, that's impossible. I said, because I've already applied to Northampton County Court. They've been squashed. And the reason they've been squashed is because you weren't even in the country. And so the bailiff said, no, we're clamping the car. So
you'd already heard about these tickets. You'd gone back to the council. Which council?
Basically, it comes up. Dart charge comes under Essex Council, doesn't it?
All right. Okay. So you'd already established that you weren't in the country, so they couldn't have been your tickets.
I sent her my daughter's passport and showed them that she was in Australia for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that was as far as it was going, it was squashed. Thankfully, I kept the letters. So my daughter showed the bailiff and said, look. He went, no, mate, that's it. Right? He was having none of it. So I spoke to him on the phone and said, if you clamp it, I'm going to be coming home from work and taking it off. So he ends up, he clamps it, I went home, I cut it off, and then moved the car. He then rings the police, and my daughter gets stopped a week later that her own car has been stolen. The police officer arrests my daughter, and then it gets even worse because she's got a 3-year-old baby with her. My wife has had to go and get the baby because obviously she's been arrested.
So she was arrested for what?
Stealing her own car.
Stealing it? Why was she stealing her own car?
Because the bailiffs turned around and said to the police that the car's been stolen. And believe it or not, I started laughing. I couldn't help it. And anyway, I had a week and a half of on the phone, 7 hours a day, trying to sort it out. The car was impounded, taken to a pound, and I've ended up liaising with a copper who was as good as gold. I'll give him his due. And while I was on the phone to him, I got an email come through from Dart Charge saying, we're really sorry, we've made a mistake.
Oh.
This is why I'm on the phone to the police officer.
This is just by coincidence, while you're talking to him, ping in the old inbox.
And I sent it straight over to him, right? Then I got an email from Northampton County Court saying it was our fault as well.
So what?
All this grief is because someone couldn't do their job, right? But it gets better. It gets better. The car's in the pound, so I said to the police, I ain't paying for it to be taken out. So the bailiffs have conceded that they're going to have to pay for it. So I've gone down there to collect the car. This was last Saturday. my daughter just looked at me in disbelief. It's not an old car, it's only 4 years old. She looked at me in disbelief and went, "You better come and have a look at the front of my car." It was smashed to pieces.
Stop it. You must have thought you were on a hidden camera show at this point.
I tell you, honestly, I couldn't believe it. I was asking people on Twitter for help. What way should I go? What way should I go? And I'm now in the process of turning the tables on them because I'm going to issue them with a summons.
Well, of course. Just tell me, Lee, how... Because the dart charge, obviously, it's filmed as well, because I've had a fine for that.
Yep.
So what... The photographic evidence, what, have they got the wrong car, or was it a previous owner? What was the score there?
No, they've obviously... What they've done is... There's obviously a cloned vehicle that's been going across... These tickets were incurred over a period of about 3 days.
All right. So a lot of travelling over in the Dartford crossing and tunnel.
And she was in Australia. So I just could not get my head around it. And no one would concede. And all they kept saying to me was, and I honestly, "We sent you letters, we sent you letters, we sent you letters." I said, "Listen, you have not sent no letters." And then in the next breath, while this was all going on, they made the fatal mistake as well of sending me an email saying, "This is the address we sent them to." And they sent them to a previous address from 6 years ago.
So the previous address of who? Of you?
Yeah, from 6 years ago.
So they'd even got your details wrong, and they conceded that accidentally in an email.
Yep. It is a farce. They just will not... When you're trying to tell the truth, it's so frustrating because they won't listen. They just want the money.
The default position is that you're not telling the truth all the way through. So in terms of the... Because they have this curious thing, don't they? I once had a car towed away outside my own house and had to go to the car pound. And, of course, you want to have a go at the people at the car pound, but the car pound is a different company from the people who issue you the ticket. So they can say, "Oh, it's nothing to do with us," and legitimately say that. And, of course, there's a reason why they're behind sort of 3-foot thick bulletproof glass, because clearly people... get upset when they go down to the car pound. What's the legality then of a damaged car in a car pound? Because surely the impounders, or the people who take the car and the people who impound the car, must still have a duty of care for the car.
Photos are taken. The guy went straight to the screen.
Yep.
Because I turned around and said to him, "Mate, you come and have a look at this car." And he went, "Well, I can check on the screen." I went, "No problem." So they take photos.
Yeah.
So while he's basically checked out, he's come back, he went, "Yeah, you're 100% right."
So the damage happened at the pound?
The damage happened when it was in control of the police or the bailiffs.
Right.
And the bailiffs, they made me laugh. The bully boy had the cheek to ring my phone and ask me if he can come and collect his clamp. And you know what I told him he can do with that, don't you?
I can only imagine.
And to add the misery, my daughter couldn't get to work. Was threatened with the sack because she didn't turn up for work. And I tried explaining to these people when it goes in one ear and right out the other.
This is a beauty. So you have this... It's this kind of series of... it's kind of like a day in the life of a sort of Mr. Bean, isn't it? I don't mean that in the offensive way, Lee. I'm talking about as just a set of event after event after event that's against you every single time. Whatever way you turn, there's another one. It's like you're in a real life computer game.
Yep, and I've just had a email today confirming that it's going to cost £680 to correct my daughter's car.
And clearly the damage... So when it arrived at the car pound, by the way, did the video evidence show that it was damaged on arrival then?
Well, we don't know. No one knows. No one. The guy just went to me, "Yeah, you're right." He said, "We've got photos of it, and it weren't like that." And I went, "Well,
you're right. You're right that it wasn't like that when it arrived at the pound."
Yeah, I just can't believe what they seem to be a law unto themselves. And for the court, when I turned around and said to Northampton County Court, I'm going to issue you with a summons, they laughed at me and said, you can't sue the Crown.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you go over the Dartford Bridge now, do you feel a bit bilious? Is it like you're expecting a huge kind of, wacky racist type net to land on your car?
Let's be fair. Let's be honest. We know it was a money-making exercise the day they sold it.
Oh, you're not wrong about that. Yeah.
And the day they lifted up the, how many people actually forget? There's hundreds of thousands.
Well, we've just done that thing where you have the account with them, but then we change cars, and how many people do this over the course of a year? You do the thing, you register your number, and it just automatically takes the what is it, £6? I can't remember now. Off you when you go through. But if you change your car, you have to change the details. But of course you forget. They were actually quite good at saying, OK, we recognise you've changed your car, so you get one chance.
Yeah, honestly, it's been a farce from start to finish, and I will make you laugh at the end of it. My two daughters ended up rowing in the front room. My wife wouldn't say boo to a goose, she's scared of her own shadow.
Yeah.
And my two daughters end up in a punch-up in the middle of the front room. Right?
Okay.
Because one wants to borrow the other one's car and she won't let her use it. Right? The daughter, with the car that's been clamped and been put in a pound, has come worse off and has now got a broken hand. That's the God's honest truth.
So they actually had a scrap.
Yep.
There you go. So you got a broken car, a broken hand, more bureaucracy you could shake a stick at, lies coming from the people trying to fine you, fines and penalties that should never have been issued anyway, going to the wrong address regardless. Lee, it's a cracking story. I hope you solve that final point or piece of the puzzle and get the repairs paid for. What a stunning series of events. You couldn't write that, could you? You know what? There might be a possibility we talk about this tonight. I'm so angry. Do you remember the lifeboat men sacked for the mug? And it was originally, there was a pornographic mug found in a lifeboat crew depot, whatever it was. The pornographic mug was a picture of it was a joke. It was one of the male crew's head imposed on a body that isn't, you don't see anything. There's no boobs or genitals or anything like that. If you see the mug, it's just ridiculous. And they were sacked for this. And they've lost their appeal. They've now lost their appeal against this. They say they've been hung out to dry in a witch hunt. I think the actual picture from the one I'm looking at was maybe slightly more racy. But either way, this is a mug and two lifeboat, the RNLI, which is, an organisation which I think people assume is funded by the government, and it isn't. It's a charity. And these people, I assume, are volunteers for that charity. Extraordinary. We might look at that tomorrow on the programme. Stephen in Hayes. Hello, Stephen.
Yeah. Good morning, Ian.
Morning to you. What are your thoughts?
It's Lifeboat Station, by the way.
Lifeboat Station, that's the word. Good man. Good man. What are your thoughts?
Right. I'm in the midst of parking wars here where I live. We have a lot of, if you let me waffle on a bit, you'll get the gist of it.
Go on.
We're in a little close. Well, it's not a little, it's a close, okay? Where I live. I live right at the front.
Yep.
And now we had a lot of people coming in who don't live on the close, who live off the road that we're off, okay? And because parking's scarce, they garden over their drive or something. They can't park up their own drive. They choose to park in here. Now, obviously, that creates problems for residents here, and also in the emergency vehicles. Okay, so a few residents and myself decided to launch a campaign, and last week it accumulated in a traffic warden coming round, a parking enforcement officer, and you should have seen the convoy of cars streaming out.
Really?
Absolutely, it was a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, I bet it was.
You know these drop curbs.
Yep.
Yeah, there was two vans owned by brothers or the same. They live in the same flat opposite my door. Okay, on the opposite side. They park there regularly, and for some reason one got ticketed, the other one didn't. Now they don't park there anymore. Okay.
So,
sorry, go on.
No, you carry on, Stephen.
And finally, I'm in the midst of a war with I assume it's an Uber driver. He's insisted on parking in front of my door, despite a sign that I put up saying, please leave this space clear for my visitors, any taxi I might be travelling in, or any emergency vehicles, because I recently collapsed with diabetes.
Okay.
And he still insists on parking there. So this morning I put a note on there, what a lovely vehicle, something like this, or what a lovely vehicle parked outside my front door, which it nearly is. What a lovely gift. And it's taxed and insured as well, because I've checked.
Sure.
Thank you, whoever it is. Hopefully you'll get the message now.
Well, you'd hope so. The difficulty is, you are allowed to park in somebody else's road, aren't you? You're just not allowed to park illegally in someone else's road.
Well, that's correct. But when there's a polite sign, and I've explained to the guy the situation. All right, now because recently, as I said to you, I collapsed with diabetes. Okay, it's a recent complaint back in February. One good thing about it, I missed Valentine's Day.
There you go.
Anyway, that aside, it's painful to walk.
Sure.
And if he's parked right in front of my door, right, then I have to walk further to get to my front door.
Yeah.
You understand where I'm coming?
Of course.
It might sound petty to a lot of people, but believe me, if you have diabetes, then you'll know what I'm talking about.
It's important to you, of course it is.
It's important to me.
So there is another side to parking, is your point, isn't it? And that is that, yes, sometimes ticket people do get it wrong, but often so do drivers.
Yes. So, a lot of the time, believe me, there was numerous cars that were parked here outside my door, fellow residents of this estate, and they've all come up to me and apologised.
Yeah.
Since I put the sign up, and they've been very good about it, and I thank them for it. Their understanding. It's just this one guy.
There's always one guy. Stephen, thank you for that. And it's absolutely right to make that point too, that it's not just about, there are clearly overzealous characters who ticket when they shouldn't. But there are genuinely people who park when they shouldn't as well. Louis is in Exeter. Hello, Louis.
Hi, morning. Yeah,
morning.
Just listening to your the London chap before this guy, before the news. I think what he said is absolutely spot on. What I've started doing locally to where I live is spraying the signs. So every time I get a ticket that I think is unfair, for example, if our parking permit slides down the windscreen slightly, but the parking guys and girls know we have a permit. We also have two cars, and they know we've got those cars, and they know that we have permits for them. But sometimes if we forget and we get a ticket, I think that's wrong personally. So what I do, I used to be a police officer when I was a few years ago, when I was 19 to 22. So summary only offence means if you're not caught within 6 months, you can't be arrested. So criminal damage to the signs by spraying black or red spray paint on the signs. That's what I've been doing recently, and so far not being caught. Now, the thing is,
so you are spraying out the signs that say "Don't park here."
Yeah, there's signs that that no parking between here or display a permit between these times. Yeah, I'm spray painting those signs because I'm absolutely sick to the back teeth. Like I say, we've got a Jaguar F-Pace and I have a Range Rover Sport. And you see, the thing is, these people see our cars and they think we're loaded. We're not loaded. Both the cars are on contract hire. So we're just normal people who like driving nice cars. We're not particularly loaded, so they just give us tickets all the time. They know we have permits for these cars, and
why is the permit not permanently displayed then, Louis?
Because they're visitor permits. Because we used to change our cars a lot before we bought these two cars. Okay. You see, so when we applied for the permits, we got two visitor permits. So that's why. But look, the point is that it's a criminal damage offence. And it costs the local authority a lot more to replace these signs.
You can go to the electric chair for this, you know that.
No, you'd get a £100 fine at magistrates' court and a slap on the wrists, but
get a criminal record, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would. Of course, you would. Or you might be lucky to get away with a caution if you sweet talk the custody sergeant if you are arrested for it. But
your point is that by the council haven't got the time or the money to change the signs.
They haven't got the time or money quickly to change them, so they don't change them very quickly. But also, let's remember, police officers. I don't want to give you too much information, but essentially, there are normally 5 or 6 police officers covering 50 square miles of city. Okay, so obviously I've still got friends who are in the job, and you've got 5 or 6 officers covering 50, 60 square miles of densely populated area of the city. So you're not, there aren't enough officers to go and deal with these offences. And also, in relation to the guy who's got diabetes, we once got a shout to a guy who had neighbours, but he'd had emulsion poured all over his car. Now, in fact, we couldn't arrest the person, although we knew that the person had poured the emulsion over his car. We couldn't arrest him because it's not criminal damage, because emulsion washes off. So if you wanted to cause a bit of hassle, the guy who has diabetes, the van that's parked outside his house, if he pours emulsion all over it, not gloss, it's got to be emulsion because it washes off. That would upset him, to say the least. But not commit an offence in doing so, just for the record.
Right. So you haven't. How many times have you sprayed the sign?
Too many times in different areas. Yeah. Whenever I get a ticket, I go back that night and just spray 5 or 6. Yeah.
So there's not. Therefore, there's nothing in the road that. How do they? So you still get the ticket, and then what? You then go back to the appeal and say.
Yeah, mostly I'm successful, and then but it still costs the council money. So sometimes I have to pay, but most of the time I don't.
You realise there's a lot of people going to be listening to this thinking,
"What an idiot!"
Yeah, because you're costing the council money, and you seem to have a PhD in forgetting to display a permit.
Well, yeah. It's not about forgetting. Sometimes we go in to get the permit, and it's literally only 5 or 6 minutes. And then you know how it is when you go in, and you see your post, and you quickly go to your post, and you think, I better sort this out. You start dialing them, then you think, actually, better put the permit on the car. Well, it's one of those. And sometimes, several times actually in the last 2 or 3 months, we've had tickets. I know Steph's had one on the F-Pace, and she's been like, look, for God's sake, we've only just got back, and it's literally been 5 or 6 minutes, and they've got a ticket, and the guy's like, no, sorry, too late.
So there is a sort of an overwhelming sense of injustice going on here.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. Yeah.
This is the way you've chosen to fight it, with mostly success. Louis, thank you for that. Louis in Exeter, who's been spraying signs. Can I just say, I think I don't need to, but there's going to be an Ofcom fan out there saying, the man on the radio just advised us to start spraying signs, which of course he didn't, and I wouldn't, and you shouldn't. And if you do, you could end up getting arrested and going to court, getting fined, and a criminal record. It is wrong at every single level. Although there's a little bit of us that go, yeah. Not really. No, we don't do that at all. 0345 6060 9. Yeah, we encourage no spray painting in any shape or form, unless, of course, you run a spray painting body workshop, in which case, of course, fantastic. But not signs, obviously, as previously established. We'll... A text from Errol in Raynham. How you doing, Errol? Who says, interested to hear you're talking about parking tickets. I paid a £60 parking fine today to Euro car parks. I didn't want to pay it, and I did go on a few forums and ask if I should pay or ignore. Interestingly, it was almost 50-50. I couldn't be bothered trying to contest it, as I've heard some horrendous stories of people going all the way to court and then having CCJs against them, so I bottled it and they won. There is a famous case, Parking Eye versus Beavis, won by Parking Eye, which almost put me off going the whole hog and not paying. Most people cannot be bothered contesting the fines, as they have neither the time nor the energy. Those that do, I salute them, and long may it continue. I'm now going to have to look up Parking Eye versus Beavis. But there are loads of those. I think for the parking companies, often they don't pursue it. because it's costly for them, of course. There's a cost implication for those guys too, even if they win sometimes. Michael in Ilford. Hello, Michael.
Hi, good evening, Ian.
Good evening to you. I'm all right, thanks. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Right, about 2 months ago, I received a ticket for parking by Parking Eye in Morrison's car park in Stratford.
This is one of the ones where they photograph you going in and going out again, yeah?
Yeah, well, my car was supposedly on a double yellow line, and it was there for approximately 45 minutes. So I looked at the car. First of all, I've never been into Morrison's of Stratford. I don't even know where Morrison's of Stratford is.
You don't know what you're missing, mate. It's beautiful.
Yeah, you're true. Not
as quite as good as Morrison's at Brighton, but there you go.
I got this ticket, so I looked at it and I thought, hold on, there's lots of differences between this car and my car. The number plate was the same, the model of the car was the same, but I had 2 stickers in my window, National Trust sticker and an old tax sticker, which I put parking tickets in. That was there. On their car it wasn't. My VW sign was black, theirs was silver, their grille was broken, mine wasn't. My number plates had the maker or the distributor of the car on it, theirs didn't, and a couple of other differences.
Yeah. So it was obvious.
It was a cloned vehicle.
Yeah.
So I phoned them up. Oh, I didn't phone them up, sorry. I contacted them by email saying it's not my car, these are the differences on there, etc., etc. It's not my vehicle, it's obvious cloned, and that's it. Reported it to the police that I was a cloned vehicle running around, and heard no more. Another letter came down a couple of weeks or so later, saying that you owe us this money, you haven't paid it, etc. You've got so many days to pay it, and I then sent a letter back. I photographed my vehicle as well. I then sent a letter back to Parking Eye saying to them, for the first letter that I sent to you claiming this was not my vehicle, I'm now sending you another letter. I didn't charge you for the first letter, but now on this letter, I have told you it's not my vehicle. I gave you all the reasons. You are at liberty to come down and speak to me, or come down by appointment to inspect my car, and now you have 28 days in which to pay a fine of £65. If you do not pay within the 28 days, it will go up to £100.
Nice.
And now I'm waiting to hear from them. If I don't get any joy, I'm going to go through to Morrison's, hold them responsible and claim it off of them.
What I don't get is that one assumes, this is not an I know when you pay a parking fine, it's an automated system, press 1, put your credit card, all of that. But when an appeal goes through, there is an actual human looking at the evidence you've just talked about, the photographs, the description. There's an actual human looking at that. At what point do they read all of that or see all of that and say, no, we're still going to pursue this fine?
I don't know. The thing I can think of, because we had give you a very brief idea, I had a double glazing company putting windows into my house, and the van parked to unload the windows. Along came a traffic warden at 8:42 and booked the van at 8:43. And the owner of the van says, I've got to pay a parking fine, or I can't afford it, and all the rest of it. And I just said to him, leave it to me, I'm going to search this further. I went on to Google and discovered that double glazing companies and scaffold companies can unload their vehicles between 20 and 40 minutes in that period of time, because they can't be expected to drag this stuff through the streets after finding a parking place 100 yards away. I contacted the council. They took one look at it and said, we can see through the window of that van that the doors are open and the units are inside it. He said, we're cancelling it now. That was Redbridge. Yeah. So I said, you've got to teach your guys about the law. And they agreed. But this other, the Parking I1. I'm now waiting to hear.
Well, good luck, Michael. I would and do let us know the outcome as well, because I'm now intrigued. I hope it should all pan out rather well, so thank you for that. I can't really see why companies just can't take basic common sense. By the way, there is another subject we've never talked about, smart meters. I got a letter today from the energy company, from the gas company, saying you might be eligible for smart meter, the smart meter changeover thing. And I'd never really considered it. I would actually quite like to get rid of the meters, because that's a whole cupboard that could be created, where at the moment there's just two bulky old meters that were probably put in there decades ago. And when you go to the smart meter, they don't take your meters out like you think they might. They just swap it over. The meters is too much hassle, isn't it, to take it out? So I got this letter saying, do you want a smart meter? And if you call this number, they'll tell you whether you are, on the list to get one. And I remember something in the back of my head said, isn't there meant to be some kind of health conspiracy about having a smart meter? Also a security issue with having a smart meter. And then on the front of the Telegraph today, in one of their features section, the truth about smart meters and health. Maybe we'll revisit that in the third hour tomorrow. Alex, did you just say what are smart meters? Hey, get this. Alex, my producer, has just told me he used to be a gas meter reader. And he says he liked it because you could do 100 if they were outside your house. So if you're outside meter, Alex, the gas meter reader, liked it because he could just open your little cupboard with a little key, open it up, have a little look. 480, he could do 200 by midday and back home watching Jeremy Kyle on loop. He loved it. But now your smart meter, it's a whole different ball game, isn't it? But I keep hearing this, it's bad for your health. It's just Wi-Fi, isn't it? Is there any other implication to a smart meter? Apparently they don't save you much money. I can sort of believe that. And there is a security implication that people can tap into your Wi-Fi. We might do that. We might look at that tomorrow night, because it's genuinely interesting. They want the whole country to be switched over to smart meters by X date. But lots of people aren't in the right area, apparently. That's it from us. Cracking stuff tonight.